I don't see any of the committee. Good afternoon, everybody. We're just waiting for the members of the committee to join.
Hey, Perry.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councillor Campbell. Good afternoon, Perry. Just we're waiting on the rest of the committee to join here.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Where did you get that?
What's that?
Where'd you get that?
That's from the Neighborhoods Association Committee. I got a call from who? Geez, I got a call and I said, "You want to buy a T-shirt?" I said, "Yeah, that's cool." So I got it. Yeah, just got it this morning.
That's amazing.
Yeah, cool.
You have to send me some contact info.
Yeah, that's from oh my gosh, I'm
Jerry?
Yeah, sorry, Jerry Firth. You don't know about that?
I'm out of the loop. You're much more hip than I am, though, too.
Yeah, yeah, but they're both replaced, so.
Yeah. Well, that was good.
Just a note here, Councillor Campbell, to see one member has joined of the committee. We're waiting on another one is joining right now, and we are now live streaming out.
So be on good behavior. Got it. I see Jeff is here and Blaine is here.
He is.
Yeah. And we're waiting for Rob, I'm going to guess.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it's always a good guess.
Yeah. Well, it is 12:30. I do, just an FYI, I do need to be done by 3:30. I'm going to get my flu shot. So, yes.
Flu?
Or my COVID shot. Yeah, COVID shot. Sorry. Have you got yours? No, you're not. You're too young, right? That's right.
I've got, well, at one point it was 11 days. I think they pushed it back.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I'm in the queue for like 11 days from now.
Good. Are you booked?
No.
You can.
No.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I went to the website because, Donna Koslovi from Green Acres said, go book now. Yeah. So I went on and I saw you had booked. Yeah. And so I went on and it said, only these dates can book. So I'm like, crap.
Yeah.
Crap.
Looks like everybody's here, so I will call this meeting of the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee to order. Should we take a roll call first off? Ryan?
Yes, we can do that, Councillor. I'm going to start. Acting Mayor Hagan.
Present.
Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Shiro.
Here.
Chair Campbell.
I am here.
All present and accounted for. In the chamber with me currently is myself, Ms. Moncrief, and Mr. Martins from the Galt Museum.
Thank you. We'll start with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The city of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. We can adopt the consent. Can we go that consent agenda through, if there's any objections to our consent agenda?
So moved.
So we'll pass that. We don't need to vote on that, right? We can just adopt. Okay. That's the consent agenda. Also, we'll adopting the agenda as well. Is there any problems with adopting the agenda as is?
I'll move.
Okay, that is done. Let's move to the presentations. We have right off the bat, Perry Stein. Perry, take it away.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And I've got two of my colleagues joining me. We have Pamela Beebe from the Indigenous Relations Office and Patrick Wilson, who's one of the two co-chairs from the Reconciliation Lethbridge Advisory Committee. Unfortunately, the other co-chair, Trina Tallow, sends her regrets. She's unable to join us today. We're going to do kind of a tag team presentation. Such as the work that we do, it takes many, many hands. So I'm going to kick us off, and then we'll pass it around as we go through. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the presentation today is to, I guess, introduce ourselves to the new SPC. We haven't been here before, so to give an update to council and the community on the work of the Reconciliation Committee in recent months, and to give an update on the work of the Indigenous Relations Office. We thought it was important to kind of bring those two together. Sometimes it's hard to tell them apart, but it's good that we can kind of talk about the broader corporate relationship building work that we're doing that kind of parallels or and supports the work of the Reconciliation Committee. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn things over to Patrick and Pam. Patrick's going to walk us through some of the roles and responsibilities of the Reconciliation Committee, and Pam's going to do the same from the Indigenous Relations Office.
Thanks, Perry. Okay, everyone. Thank you for receiving our presentation today. It's a pleasure to be able to do so for you. I'll be talking about the left-hand part of this slide, and this is probably just an issue for me, but I can only see part of the slide. I don't know if that's an issue for the rest of you or not, but I have my own copy open here, so don't worry about it if it's all fine on your end. I wanted to, as a preface, just mention how rewarding this work has been for me personally, and what an engaging and competent and important committee I think it is. So, I mean, obviously I think so because I'm on it, but I also asked to be part of it because I saw the importance of the work, and I also want to acknowledge and thank Pam and Perry and Ali for their incredible stewardship of this committee. It's sort of cliche to say we couldn't do the work without them, but it's also real. We couldn't do the work without them, and they do a tremendous job guiding the work of the committee and being resources for us and doing all of the heavy lifting that makes it possible. And I also do want to recognize Trina Tallow's work as co-chair on this committee. It's a shame she had a conflict today, but this really is a collaboration not only between the co-chairs and Perry, Pam, and Ali, but also all of the members of the committee. And this committee, I don't have grounds for comparison, but I'm struck by how incredibly active this committee is and the kind of time commitment that this committee represents. Trina and I have at least weekly meetings, and oftentimes more than one meeting a week related to different aspects of the work of the committee. So it's something that we dedicate a tremendous amount of time and attention to. It's also strikes me that this might be kind of a unique committee in that we report to council, but we also have an obligation to engage the Lethbridge community in the broadest of circumstances. And so, you know, we're sort of juggling audiences in a way, as we're responsive to council, but we're also supposed to be engaging and responsive to concerns of the committee, and the community, and this is reflected in how our meetings are conducted. All of our meetings are open. We welcome anyone who wishes to attend a meeting to attend, And we also welcome people to participate, even if they are non-members of the committee. So we have a number of people who are regular attendees of RLAC meetings who are not formal members of the committee. And this speaks, I think, to the importance that the issues that the committee is dealing with have for the community at large. So part of the challenge then that we face is navigating these different audiences and different realities, attempting to engage community while also managing the expectations that community may have of what RLAC is about and what we're capable of achieving through the committee's work. And so that was a much longer preface than maybe I had planned, but turning to the left-hand part of the slide, the Reconciliation Lethbridge Advisory Committee roles and responsibilities. So as I alluded to previously, one of the central roles of the committee is to provide reconciliation advice to council and administration. And so I suspect that you are all aware of the role that we play in attempting to give guidance when there are issues related to reconciliation, and also to make recommendations to council when we see fit on certain initiatives. We also are oriented around community engagement in different ways, right? And so we are an entry point in a way for community to access the city with issues related to reconciliation and help to prioritize some of those issues through communication with council. We also engage in a lot of community outreach. And so we organize different community-focused events, and we'll talk about these in slightly more detail in a few moments, but we organize annually a range of different events. Some of them are our annual events, some of them are kind of one-off events, but that are organized to both raise awareness about reconciliation initiatives and to help generate partnerships with the community through which we can advance some of the goals of reconciliation as articulated in the TRC. And so the ultimate goal then is to try to fulfill some of the objectives of the reconciliation plan that the city articulated a few years ago, and that is heavily guided by the recommendations stemming from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And now one of the central activities that we're engaged in, thanks to the support from council, is advising on the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Work Plan. And I think at this point I'll hand it off to Pam or Perry.
Oki, Nith Donico Pamela, and I am the Indigenous Relations Coordinator here at the City of Lethbridge. I work alongside Perry in the Indigenous Relations Office, and that is separate from RLAC, so we just wanted to sort of distinguish the two. We work across the city on any of the relationships that we have with urban Indigenous communities, Siksikatsitapi or Blackfoot Confederacy, and we work across the community. We help advocate for their priorities, so we're constantly receiving feedback from them. We lead the events, so right now we're planning for National Indigenous Peoples Day. We will plan for Reconciliation Week in September. There's a lot of different events that happen internally that we help with. We look at any partner that we have and how we can build relationships, get to know one another, and support each other's work. We've also been the lead on the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Work Plan, although we do consult the Reconciliation Committee along the way on most things. Because there's so much happening in different areas, it's often a 1 or 2 page report that we're able to give to them monthly. And the reason we do it through a report is that so they have the opportunity to bring the issues which they are hearing in the community forward, which helps guide the Reconciliation Committee work. And then another thing we wanted to highlight was that we often hear from other municipalities we would do the same. We would reach out. For example, I'm working on something related to smudging for the city of Lethbridge, but we hear from other municipalities in order to see the work we are doing, and that keeps Perry very busy because he does the strategic planning. And as the coordinator, I come along and I help where I can. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Patrick. Next slide, please, Ali. I'm going to turn it back over to Patrick, who's going to talk about some of the recent work and priorities of the Reconciliation Committee, and then we'll do the same with the Indigenous Relations Office.
Great, thank you, Perry. Yeah, so we've done a lot of different work in a range of areas in the last little while, and I guess this is our first report to you in this format. So so we'll try to summarize some of them for you here. I also wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the evolution over of the committee over the last little while. This is a relatively new committee of council, and this kind of work is relatively new in Canada. So, and it's also really complex work. Reconciliation work falls under the broader umbrella of equity, diversity, and inclusion work, the EDI work, that is becoming increasingly recognized for the important contributions it brings to civil society building. But EDI work is slow, and it's complex, and it has to be done in a cautious and deliberate manner in order to do it right. And so we're learning, or I'm learning, I think other people already know, but I'm learning as I engage this work more and more about the need to recognize those complexities and to allow the work to unfold in a slow and deliberate manner. The committee is also organized around responses to the TRC, and like I suggested, reconciliation work generally in Canada is relatively new, and so I think we're all kind of finding our path as we're working through this, and we're really beginning to gain our footing, I think, in the committee's work in the last little while, thanks to the hard work of Pam, Perry, Ali, and all of the members of the committee. One of the things that we've learned recently is that the truth part of truth and reconciliation is extremely important, but requires really, really difficult kinds of conversations. And those conversations have to take place in order for the subsequent work of reconciliation to occur effectively. And so part of what the committee's also been analyzing is how best to have those conversations around truth, both in terms of our relationship with council and in terms of our relationship, excuse me, with the broader community. In terms of our initiatives, in the last year or so, we created a number of different subcommittees, and we had subcommittees previously as well, that were oriented around engaging specific kinds of issues or activities. And some of those are articulated here on the slide that you're looking at right now. We're also in the process of restructuring those subcommittees and organizing them thematically. And the idea here is to hopefully facilitate greater community engagement by bringing community members interested in particular thematic issues into the discussion more effectively. So some of our current priorities then, what we've been doing these last few years, sorry, my email is dinging like crazy, I apologize. My students are finishing an exam, and thus there's a lot of panic right now. The current priorities this year are organized around the theme of voice and representation, and we have a theme each year that kind of guides our work thematically. One of the things that we've been working on then in terms of, or a couple of the different themes that we've been working on in the last little while are oriented around engaging community leaders and decision makers on certain priority initiatives. So one of them has been the curriculum reform proposed by the provincial government. Another part of our work has been around the representation of Indigenous peoples in media, and then the MMIWG work plan that Pam talked about, where we've been offered the possibility to provide input where appropriate into that work. Centrally, our initiatives are oriented around ensuring that the voices of Indigenous people are represented in city initiatives, and so there's been a lot of work around elder protocol, teachings, knowledge holder engagement, some of the work that that Pam and Perry are helping to organize within the city administration. And then there's another initiative which doesn't appear on this slide, but which we have been working on, which we're in the process of working on, which is also to analyze the current composition of all of the city's BCCs with an eye to providing recommendations about if there are others of these BCCs that would benefit from having a dedicated Indigenous representative on them. And so hopefully we'll be able to come back to you sometime in the not too distant future if we find that there are recommendations that might be helpful in that area. That kind of relates to the next bullet on this slide, to provide timely and strategic advice to administration and council, policies, bylaw, procedure reviews, and we are grateful that council brings these issues to us when they arise as well. And then we are working to build partnerships in the broader community that help to advance the work of reconciliation in the Lethbridge community. So we have a number of activities and partnerships on the go. The Southern Alberta Art Gallery film series, the annual engagement with Sisters in Spirit and Reconciliation Week, Indigenous Peoples Day, to add another one to that list. I'll turn it back over to Pam and Perry.
Thanks, Patrick. Next slide, please. So the next 2 pages, at a high level, will review some of Indigenous relations initiatives, and then Pam and I are gonna go into depth into 4 of them, just to kind of take a bit of a deeper dive. The way we kind of have been talking about this is there's 4 buckets that we're working in right now. There's governance projects, there are social projects, economic development and employment projects, and then projects focused on education and representation. So I'm going to go through some of them here, and I'm going to go fast, so I'm more than happy to answer any more detailed questions that council might have along the way. The first one, and many of these I should say also, some relate to the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls work plan, and other ones are other projects that we provide advice and support to. The first one here is about stronger relationship building and between the administrations of city and Kainai, both at the administrative level and the elected official level. We share a 10-kilometer border with Blood Tribe, so it's important that we have a strong relationship, not from that sense only, but from the larger economic and social linkages that our communities have. Some of the projects that the IRO has been giving advice and support to recently include the Municipal Development Plan, which is coming before council for public hearing in a couple weeks. Again, the Transportation Master Plan, the Heritage Management Plan, 2 projects that are kind of at early stages. We're doing some earlier exploration of what a gender-based analysis or intersectional analysis would look like from the perspective of planning and decision-making at the city, and we hope to have some things to share on that in the coming months. Also trying to, kind of clarify our reporting relationship with council and RLAC and the community. Patrick talked about kind of the dual nature of the work that we have, where we're accountable not only to city council, but also in some senses to the broader community. So we are trying to figure out what those governance kind of reporting relationships look like and explore those. Another one that I'll maybe spend another minute talking about is the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Both the TRC and the National Inquiry talk about the use of the UN Declaration as a strong foundation for reconciliation and relationship building, and have encouraged municipalities and all levels of government across Canada to apply it in that way as a basis for reconciliation work. So there is a motion on the books from RLAC encouraging council to do that. Administration hasn't brought that to council quite yet because we feel like there's some education work that has to happen both at the city level, city staff level, and elected official level. And so there'll be some opportunities coming up in the next few months for staff and officials to learn more about the UN Declaration, particularly from the perspective of Blackfoot peoples themselves. So we hope to kind of be able to engage that with you in the next few weeks or months, to position ourselves better to understand what it is that we're engaging with, and to understand the expectations and perspectives of our neighbors as we would do that. Other things that we have coming up include reviewing our communications protocols and policies to ensure that we're communicating effectively at an intergovernmental type level, reviewing bylaws to ensure that Indigenous peoples, and in this particular sense, Indigenous women, aren't being disproportionately impacted by legislative tools, and that again comes from the work of the Missing and Murdered work plan, as does the incidents reporting. On the social side, we're working on a few different initiatives, including commemorating both the residential school survivors and also the survivors and families of the tragedy of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And that's going to be a collaborative project, both between the Indigenous Relations Office and RLAC, but also involving the Public Art Committee and other partners at the city as well. We're quite excited about that, and we'll have some more information to share on that in the next few months. Other projects coming out of the work plan include advocating for an Indigenous women's emergency shelter, partnering with our neighbors on some sports partnerships. So we're currently in conversations with Alberta Treaty Hockey Provincial Tournament, hockey tournament, about possibly hosting that event here. It was supposed to happen last Easter. It would be the first time that event was hosted outside of Calgary. We know for many obvious reasons why that didn't happen. So we're currently in conversation about potentially hosting that early in the fall, if not April next year. We're really excited about that. Sports has a really powerful way of bringing people together. Pam has been working hard with Red Crow Community College to address some transportation access issues that their students face. Unlike the other post-secondary institutions in the city, the students of that institution face unique challenges in terms of accessing educational opportunities. So we're working closely with them to kind of address some of those things as they come up. More broadly speaking, we advance community partnerships. So we're trying to work with other institutions and businesses on reconciliation projects, advancing the Indigenous Cultural Center, which is coming to the CIP in a few weeks, and other projects, again, Eyes in Motion, which is about ensuring the physical safety of Indigenous women in our community who are in distress, and the Rec and Culture Fee Assistance, which is about increasing the access of Indigenous peoples to programs, arts, culture, rec, and sports that help them to engage in those types of programs in the community. So it's a build on to the Rec and Culture Fee Assistance program that already exists, and I actually believe you have a report coming to you today. Next slide, please. From the economic side, you may have seen that we currently have 3 Indigenous summer student positions posted. Pam's going to talk about this a bit more in depth. This is one project that we're quite enthusiastic about. We are hoping to create up to 6 positions this year through the funding provided from the work plan. We're just in the final steps of partnering with a local employment agency to provide transit fee assistance to Indigenous women re-entering the workforce who have identified transportation as a barrier, trying to understand what the impacts of removing that barrier are on people in terms of accessing employment, but also in terms of reducing stresses in other areas of their life at the same time. And then there are 2 projects there, hiring practice review and employment equity, that are more structural reviews of the systems and processes that we have in place in terms of, I guess, building upon the recent OBR from Council, creating a more reflective workforce. These are structural changes that would help advance some of those outcomes. And then finally, we have in our work plan sometime in the next 2 to 3 years to do more in-depth work in terms of Indigenous procurement. So we know other municipalities and other levels of government. So most recently, the City of Edmonton announced an Indigenous procurement framework. We know the University of Saskatchewan, the government of the Yukon, the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo have all been entering into this space of social procurement and Indigenous procurement. So we'll take some kind of next steps in evaluating what an Indigenous procurement kind of framework or review might look like from the city's perspective. And then the last area that I wanted to highlight is in terms of education and representation. So we're doing work to streamline the ability for the community to access information on reconciliation and Indigenous relations project on the website and through communications tools. A project that I'm going to talk about in a few slides in more depth about better representation of territory at City Hall through a new flagpole. Indigenous awareness training, this is again coming from the work plan. This is to satisfy new core training requirements that all city staff will have around Indigenous cultural competency. So we're working with community partners right now to do some of the early scoping for what that looks like. And again, providing more access to tools and resources to the community. So we have both an MMIWG and reconciliation toolkit that we hope to launch around September, October of this year. Indigenous placemaking, these are projects that are designed to better reflect Indigenous peoples, cultures, languages upon the public realm of the city. Again, there's a CIP project coming up for council's consideration in a few weeks. And then finally, as Patrick has already talked about, a number of events. So not only are we kind of see these as joint city and RLAC events and providing kind of the administrative horsepower to support some of these events, including Reconciliation Week, National Indigenous Peoples Day, Sisters in Spirit, and Orange Shirt. Those are kind of the big four, I guess you could say, that we try to program and plan in partnership with the community every year. Next slide, please. So we have 4 specific projects that we'd like to highlight because we think that they're either upcoming and there's some information that we think SPC and council or the public might be interested in, or we just really like them and want to talk about them. We're quite excited about them. So the first one is a commemoration project. This one comes from 2 sources. So the first one, in the city's approved reconciliation implementation plan, one of the desired outcomes is to create a monument to the survivors and families of and the victims of residential schools in Canada. We also have a similar statement coming out of the MMIWG work plan, which talks about commemorating the victims and survivors and families of that tragedy. We thought it would be an interesting opportunity to actually do broader community engagement jointly on those 2 initiatives to understand how they might relate to one another. We know that there is probably a relationship in terms of geography or the narrative or the artistic representation or whatever it might be. So this is a way of us being quite efficient with resources, but also ensuring that there's an opportunity for those 2 projects to speak together. And as I mentioned before, this is a collaborative undertaking, not only of the Reconciliation Committee and the Indigenous Relations Office, but also the Public Art Committee and potentially Heart of Our City Committee, depending on geography. In the next few weeks, pending funding, we will be releasing an expression of interest opportunity for an Indigenous artist-led engagement project, which would reach deep into the community to understand the community's expectations for those 2 commemorative projects. And that process will help us determine not only what the community's expectations are in terms of desired outcome, how they wish to interact with these commemorative projects, what the shape they could take, but also help us to determine things like next steps, design, and capital cost that would help us move forward in realizing the outcomes of those 2 projects. Next slide, please. Turn it over to Pam for this one.
Thank you. Well, we're especially excited about the Indigenous Student Employment Program. We currently have 3 positions posted on the City of Lethbridge website with early April deadline. So please send students our way if you can. We're currently interviewing for a law student position. We had advertised for 2 positions, so those interviews are happening. This work came about as part of the work plan that was approved at the January 12th council meeting. So we're very appreciative of that. And so we're able to do this for the next few years. We also have the opportunity to stretch that funding as a co-op position if somebody, if a student approaches us and decides that would be a better fit. So there's a lot of possibility there. This will be our first year doing this, and we're excited about it. Our goal has been to create these 2 short-term positions for Indigenous students, specifically around the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirited work plan. So keep that in mind. And we're also focusing on the STEAM positions, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So as indicated on this slide, we have the opportunity for these 6 positions with the funding this year, and then we'll have the similar funding in the next few years. Thank you to the council. Next slide, please. For this one, we wanted to highlight the Siksikatsitapi and Reconciliation Lethbridge Advisory Committee flags. We, in last year, they had held a competition with Lethbridge Community College, and the finalist who won was selected. However, we have to make a few modifications, not me, the engineers obviously, in order to fit it for the front of City Hall. And so we're hoping for that project. First of all, it was created through the current council operating budget, and the partnership happened in 2019. So we've been engaging with the Blackfoot Confederacy. We're very close to a final plan with them as part of the nation engagement plan. Like, how do we build our partnership with Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai, and Amskapi, Piikani in the States. So that's a different jurisdiction. But we're hoping that with everything will be finalized and completed by Reconciliation Week, which is always held the week of the anniversary of the signing of Treaty 7, so the September 22nd that week. And we're hoping it'll be done, and then we'll be able to fly those 2 flags permanently. So yeah, we're really looking forward to that opportunity. We're just also still creating the budget to finalize all the details.
Thanks, Pam. And the next slide. This one kind of builds off the previous slide, because the act of putting up a flagpole and flying the Confederacy flag on a permanent basis is an act of placemaking. So placemaking really is a concept about strengthening the relationships between people and the places they live, and activating public space to kind of be that force that brings people together. It often results in social outcomes, cultural outcomes, economic outcomes. And so we're quite excited about the notion of focusing placemaking efforts on Indigenous culture, language, and values. And we know that placemaking as a concept gets quite a lot of attention in the draft MDP that's under Council's consideration. Part of this work is about better representing Indigenous peoples in the landscape where they've lived for several thousands of years. The amount of meaningful representation of Indigenous peoples in this community is quite low, and sometimes it's actually quite inappropriate. So we're trying to kind of better think about that, and how we can not only decolonize some public spaces and make room for Indigenous cultural values to resurge and reemerge as they have been here for several thousands of years. Part of that work, as it ties directly to the MMIWG work plan, is about better reflecting people in the spaces they live. Some of the research coming out talks about the disconnection of Indigenous peoples from their urban communities, despite the fact that they might be 2nd or 3rd or 4th generation city residents. That disconnection can create mental health challenges. It can create feelings of discrimination, isolation, disconnection. And so not only is there kind of a placemaking component, which is about vibrancy and community connection, but there's also a really tangible level or impact at the level of the individual. This isn't necessarily something new. We have had micro Indigenous placemaking projects in the past. Some examples here are the Oki project, which I think a couple of us have as our permanent teams backgrounds. There's some work that the Lethbridge Public Library has done, including most recently reflecting the language of Siksikates to be on some of the wayfinding signage in the building, which once everybody can go back to the library, they can go and visit and enjoy. Some of the work of the public art program that's being proposed talks about Indigenous placemaking, and as does the work of the urban revitalization in the heart of our city in the downtown. One of the key aspects of this work is really about communications and engagement. So we want to make sure that as we entertain some of these projects, that we're being clear about what communities' expectations are, trying to balance expectations, and making sure the work that it kind of results from that is meaningful and not token, which is a risk in this space, I think. So to be able to do that effectively means reaching out in the community and having strong communications and engagement. Next slide, please. So this is to wrap it up. We have a couple of questions. The first one, understanding, we would like to know your perspective as SPC about what priorities or I guess priorities that you might have for this work for the remainder of your term. We'd like to help advance some of those things, but also specific to the flying of the Blackfoot Confederacy and Reconciliation flags at City Hall. We would like to know what level of engagement you would like to have on that going forward. So some members of council were involved in the design competition back in 2019. As we move to finalize that design and start digging holes on your front lawn, we would like to know how close of an engagement you would like to have with us on that, whether that's information updates regularly to SPC with some dates and times into design, or if there's something more in depth that you would like to see. So this is your front lawn, and we would like to make sure that we, in the spirit of communications and engagement, do just that.
Thank you very much, Perry, and also Patrick and Pamela for all that information. I see that Jeff Carlson has his hand up, so let's throw it over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Patrick, Perry, Pam. I think we should apply for P3 funding for the three. Thanks for the presentation. I try and attend as many of the RLAC meetings as I can, so I'm fairly up to speed with a lot of the work that's being done. One thought, so I have some questions, but Perry, you had said that you wanted some answers from us. And sorry, the last slide just said what priorities, but then you had some specific asks. Can you just pinpoint those asks? And knowing that this is just the committee, we could actually go back to our colleagues for more for a broader answer to those questions. But just can you pinpoint I think it was 3 things you asked for.
The real question for the Flagpole project.
Okay.
So this is a council approved project from the 2019 operating budget. We are fulfilling that project, and we would like to know if there's any expectation for ongoing engagement before we start tearing up the lawn. Because the intention, as Pam mentioned, is to install the flagpole and fly it and engage the Blackfoot Confederacy ahead of Reconciliation Week this year, but we wanted to put the offer out there for if SPC or council wanted to be engaged on that one more time, I guess, or a couple more times before we do anything.
Okay, thank you. I'll give my gut response and let my other colleagues say it. Council has already approved the project. I think just updates to let us know where it's at. I don't think there's any more approvals or anything that are necessary, but it's always nice to be informed, and the sooner you know and get it into our calendars, the more likely it is that we'll be available that day. When is Reconciliation Week? It's September 8th? No.
It's the 3rd week of September.
3rd week. Okay. Thank you. So I'll jump out, Mr. Chair, if my other colleagues want to talk about their thoughts on the flagpoles, but mine is just give us an update to let us know what the timeline is.
And I would echo Councillor Carlson as well. Can I just ask? I know that initially with the flagpoles, like the cost for any of those flagpoles in front were like $250,000, and we went to the college, or you went to the college, and you didn't have to charge $250,000. So ultimately, I mean, it's an engineering issue, is it not, for putting those flags where they are so that they are as the other flag poles are? Can you kind of just explain that a little bit to me? Absolutely.
So the approved budget was $150,000. Most of that is materials and like the actual engineering costs. We are balancing between the winning design and a cost-effective option to actually install that. So we're actually hoping that the true cost comes in around maybe $110,000 as opposed to $150,000. And part of that is, again, shrinking the design that won the competition, but still honoring the design and kind of the spirit of that winning design, meeting kind of fiscal expectations, but also community expectations.
Well, for me, I would just like to keep, like Jeff said, just kind of keep us in the loop on that. And I just wonder about, I mean, placement is the big thing. I mean, it's important for you to where it's placed, and it's important for aesthetically as well, right? Or, I mean, what's the answer to that? Where you put it?
It's going to likely, so one of the criteria we had as part of the design competition was it should have aesthetic continuity. That's what we called it. So it should look like it belongs. It shouldn't necessarily look like it was original. because that was the feedback we got from the community is to avoid the assumption of tokenism, don't make it look like it was always there because it wasn't. So we're trying to aesthetically connect it to the existing design of City Hall, but in a way that still gives it the place of prominence that I think Council's expectation was of it. So it'll kind of flow along where the existing flagpole structure, skip over the sidewalk, and then kind of occupy some space in that grassy area in the corner of Stafford and 4th.
Oh, good. Councilor Miyashiro, or the Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you all the P3s for the presentation. It was very, very good. So talking about the flagpoles, it has been approved. I always wondered why you just didn't move the sidewalk instead of making it more complex, but I guess there's a reason. And you don't have to answer that. I just want to say that out loud. I think for Arlock to give council updates via this committee, you're welcome to do that as often as you like. You have I believe you have a standing agenda item on this agenda. Is that correct, Ryan or Ali?
That is correct.
All of the committees that are attached to us, if you want to give us updates as frequently as you want, that's up to you. So you're welcome to do that anytime, and I think that's probably a better way to do it than any other, just to keep us informed. It doesn't have to be a full-blown presentation every time. It could be just, the 3 or 4 of you dropping in and go, hey, this is what we're doing. I mean, it's not like you have to go anywhere. Right. So we'd appreciate that. I'm really excited about the provincial hockey tournament if Lethbridge can get that and we have COVID under control. It's a huge deal for people that don't understand how big it is. It is huge. When I worked on the Blood Reserve, all of my staff wanted to leave. Literally, they all wanted to go. So having it in Lethbridge, I think will give a real perspective too. I think about how big hockey is to the Indigenous community in our whole province. Thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I said I've got some questions, but did you, Patrick, Perry, Pam, did you have more questions you wanted answered by this committee, or were those pretty much it?
I think we're good. I think what we'll do is once we have a final design and costing, we'll come back to the next available SPC and give you an update on that and share that to the community through SPC. Perfect.
Thank you. I guess I just have some more general questions about the committee and its functioning right now. And maybe I guess this is to you, Patrick. How is the committee working? One of the questions that we struggled with when setting up the membership, at least the council membership, was about having one standing member, the mayor, and then the other member being the deputy mayor that rotates through. Is that still, does that work well for the committee, or would you like more, rather than a random committee member showing up new every 6 months, would more stability or long-term be better? How's it working in that respect? That's the first question I had.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'll give my thoughts, and then maybe Pam and Perry would have something to add. I think it's actually great to have a rotating member of council, because ideally we want to be able to engage all members of council in the work of RLAC. And so if you're rotating through on a 6-month basis, presumably over the passage of time, each of you would have the opportunity to be in the room. And in my limited experience, I think I've been on the committee. COVID has made me lose track of time, but I think I've been on the committee for 3 years. It's been interesting watching people bring different perspectives to the room, which is also good, and it also renews the dialogue in a way, brings new ideas and perspectives. So I think that part of it's working really well. It's been really nice to have the mayor there every time the mayor's able to attend, which we've had some scheduling conflicts of late, but I know that Mayor Spearman makes an effort to get there whenever he can, and I think that that's beneficial as well. Since so much of what we're doing is trying to engage and have open lines of communication with council, it's good to have a constant presence there, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. Unless there's any further comments from Perry or Pam, I appreciate hearing that, because it's a different approach we've taken with this one, with the rotation, and I wanted to make sure that it was working, because I enjoyed my time there, and I hope my other colleagues do. Maybe I'll turn it around then. How are the committee members feeling about the work? Are they finding it? Are they finding themselves engaged? Are they finding the work meaningful? It's always nice to set up these committees, but if people are just showing up because they have to, especially at 9 in the morning, I'm not a morning person. I just want to know how the committee members are feeling about the work.
That's for me again, Jeff?
Sure.
Just okay. So we have had some reflection on the composition of the committee and the organization of our work, and this is a little bit of what I was alluding to earlier on when I talked about how we're still, getting our feet and figuring out exactly how to do this work. One of the unique aspects of this committee, or I don't know if it's unique or not, but one of the aspects of this committee is that we have people with a tremendous amount of expertise on issues relating to Indigenous peoples specifically, and issues of equity and inclusion more broadly, who are on the committee and who this is their life and work outside of the committee as well, right? And so sometimes, those things kind of come together, where their 9 to 5 work is also the work of reconciliation in a way. One of the things that makes the work challenging is that many of the Indigenous representatives on the committee are super overstretched because of their commitments to community more broadly, and the kinds of work that they do, and the fact that some of them in particular are working with vulnerable members of the population, and therefore have pressing daily concerns that they have to attend to, right? And so I think we're still trying to figure out the best mechanism to bring community members actively involved in the kind of subcommittee work that we're doing, because those are the pieces that we're able to move forward into kind of concrete action. And this is where Perry and Pam's suggestions that we kind of reorganize the subcommittees around themes that will, so rather than having a bunch of different standing subcommittees, have themes that several different subtopics will pertain to, might allow us to streamline that work a little bit, and also might facilitate broader engagement with the community, so that we can get more people helping to move that work forward, rather than it falling simply on the shoulders of the people who are formal members of the committee. And this is where that, the multiple audiences that we're responding to is important here, because for reconciliation to be successful, we have to be able to engage the community. If it's only the 15 members of our LAC or whatever, that's all fine and good, but we need to get the community, broadly speaking, actively invested in this work for it to be successful. So we're hoping that reorganizing the work this way, and then beginning to reach out to potential community partners, will help to take some of the strain off of our LAC members by engaging more people in that work itself.
Great, thanks. And I appreciate that you've actually taken time as a committee to be a bit introspective and say, is this meaningful, and are we accomplishing things, and is everyone? So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
just on that last point, that's where at least I, as an individual, realized that we hadn't been having the truth conversations. And I didn't realize that until we started to have that more introspective look at the work of the committee, and started to realize why we were encountering perhaps some obstacles to effectively getting our work done. And it was that we hadn't had the difficult conversations yet, right? So, and we haven't finished those conversations, but I hope we're starting them, right?
The truth part is the difficult part to get through first. I in fact, Perry, you made some comments through this presentation that I took as truth. That there are challenges in our community. I think you were still speaking a bit kindly, but I think the truth needs to be addressed. Mr. Chair, just one final thought. I did have some other questions, but I think mostly, folks, you covered it well. Council orientation. We tried, I think it was through you, Pamela. I think it was through you to try and get some unconscious bias training or a workshop for council. I'm not sure if it was through you or Tamara, but it fell through because of our busy schedule. There's an election coming up. After that election, there will be 9 brand new members of council. And that's a great opportunity during their orientation. Have you guys had any connection with the city clerk's department to say, while they're there, trapped in the room for 2 weeks, 9 to 5 every day, maybe we could provide some guidance or training or information? Has that connection happened?
Councillor Carlson, you'll be excited to know that yes, that comes up regularly. We've had discussions both in the Indigenous Relations Office and with the Reconciliation Committee. So we're looking forward to bringing training around the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. We're just working on who the exact correct speakers should be. We talked about orientation. One of our reconciliation members, who's also a traditional knowledge holder, has talked about, well, what does the ceremony look like if you do invite Indigenous people or elders? So there's a lot of discussion, nothing concrete, but yes, we are absolutely in regular contact with the city clerk's office through Ali and Chloe. They are extremely helpful to us. Excellent. I don't know, Perry, did you want to answer anything else?
So there will for sure be a component of the council orientation that talks to not only the, let's say, contemporary issues facing Indigenous peoples in this community, but also the work of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation Committee, so that the incoming councillors have a sense of where some of those files are at and can engage with them directly as quick as possible. Excellent.
Very pleased to hear it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Higgin.
Actually, thank you. Councillor Carlson asked the question, as I know we've received some information from the city clerk's office as to what we'd like to see in the fall for those new coming councillors and mayor, and I think that's extremely important. It sounds like from hearing from Pam and Perry that this has been looked into, and that could be part of the orientation package. So thank you for answering that.
Are there any other questions from members of this committee? I was just going to ask a quick one to whoever wants to take it. Just, you were talking about the commemoration projects that you have and referring to looking for the geography. Is that because you're just trying to determine where the proper spot is? Is that within the city, or is that within somewhere else other than the city? And what's the discussion around that? If you can is there an update on that, or is that still kind of up in the air?
I can give you some answers. The reason why we're looking at geography, so to be clear, the geography will be within city limits.
Will be?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We know that our partners at the Bloodrap Department of Health are working on a similar commemoration project that will likely manifest in standoff. So we're in conversation with them because there might be some linkages between those two projects. But in terms of geography, we don't exactly know the form of these commemorative projects. It might be a mural, it might be a healing garden, it might be a plaza, it might be a combination, or things that we haven't imagined yet. So one of the best practices that we've looked at is actually from the city of Whitehorse, and they did a community engagement process for a commemorative project that actually kind of opened up to the community what the physical manifestation could look like, and gave some of those examples that I gave and many, many more. We'd like to be open-minded. So once we know the community's expectations around form, then we can then think about what a location that can serve that purpose. So for example, if it was a mural project, that's going to lead us in a different direction than a healing garden, for example.
And that's aside from the possibility of an Indigenous center in the city as well, right?
That's right. We are, I guess we should be open to the idea that the commemorative project could form part of the overall design of the Indigenous Cultural Center or the outdoor gathering place that's kind of conjoined with that project. If it, and again, I'm just spitballing, but if it were to be a city facility, there would be a % for art-based kind of investment, and that potentially could be the source of funding for it. Again, everything is still kind of at super early level of discussion, but we're just trying to be very open-minded.
Great. Any other questions from council? Thank you to the 3 Ps. That's who you've become now, the 3 Ps. Appreciate that. I will. I'll ask, since you just popped up, I'll ask Councillor Miyashiro to move this. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee receive this presentation as information. Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
Call the question.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you for your time. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Yes, you just popped up. There you are. There's Lori Harrison. Thank you. Welcome, Lori. Our next submission is from Lori Harrison, Recreation and Culture Development Manager, on the Major Community Event Hosting Grant 2020 Annual Report. I hope everyone has had the opportunity to have a look at the report. Are there any questions that you have for Lori? I will just, Councillor Carlson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ms. Harrison, for being here today. Just, Lori, maybe give us a heads up what's coming down the pipe. What can we be excited for? What should we be worried about them coming for more money for?
Oh, Councillor Carlson, we are very excited, hopefully, to have the PGA taking place in June. We actually expect information this month from the PGA. They're working with Dr. Tam's offices in Toronto because the tournament goes across the country, and they're working with the Dr. Hinshaw's offices to see what the implications of COVID may be this year, but we should know in the very near future. We're hoping worst case scenario is in the fall, they actually did run one of their tournaments and it just was Canadian players instead of Canadian and American. So that may be what we're going to have this year, but we should know very soon. And then of course, the big one is the Briar in 2022. So that's very exciting. And we look forward to hosting that here.
Cool. And further to those, is there anything that's sort of in the pipe that you can speak to? Or I know that some of this stuff can't be disclosed until the group makes it known, but.
Yeah, we've had one group show some interest in an event, but because of COVID, they were planning on doing it this summer, and just in our talks with AHS, we don't believe that it would probably be approved this summer. So we're looking down the road. And to be honest, when we start these conversations, like at this point, this may not even be the right grant stream. They might be more suitable to the community event support grant, but we won't know that till we actually meet. So we've had some emails and a few phone calls, but it may be coming, but I suspect it wouldn't be until the end of this year or early next year that we'll know for sure.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Final question, if I can, Mr. Chair. I sit on the board for one more month of Tourism Lethbridge. And one of the challenges that any tourism organization has faced over the years is we get these events and then there's no connection to try and, I don't want to be crude, but to pull people's money out of their pockets while they're here. When we had the figure skating, for example, great event, awesome. Many of us went down and had an amazing time, but basically all the attendees would leave their hotel, walk to the NMAX, the event would finish, and they would walk back to their hotel because everything shut down. And that's always been a failing. And so is there anything we could build in, perhaps to the way the grant is structured, that there has to be a connection, an outreach, and partnership with Tourism Lethbridge, so that basically build a party while people are here. Because if I go to events in other communities and they give me a free bus pass and coupons to the restaurants, and the restaurants are fully staffed and open till 2 in the morning because they know that there's 4,000 people in town. Is there anything we should be thinking about building in to the grant program to make sure that connection happens?
I've recently actually met with the new executive director of Tourism Lethbridge to talk about a number of different things in their role with events. And that is something that we're looking to explore. We will be meeting again later in the spring to sort of outline that. She had a few other priorities to come first, and since it's COVID and there are no events, we didn't have to push that work through quite quickly. So that is something that actually under Chinook Country Tourist Association years ago, we actually used to be able to promote at a lot of the events. We had what we call the joint attractions campaign. So creating awareness at events of, the museum and the Japanese garden, they would pass out and distribute information. So there's a lot of potential to do that. And Tourism Lethbridge seems eager to explore that. So I do expect that we will see that going forward, and not just at the big events, but also at a lot of the events that, we would maybe consider smaller, but working with all of the event coordinators that are interested in benefiting from the skills of Tourism Lethbridge and helping them to grow their events and making them more sustainable as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad you made that connection, because we are very skilled at getting the events and attracting the events to our community. The gap I've always found is what happens after that. And so thank you for making those connections. Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You want to check your email to see if you want a new house on that phone call?
Oh, is it is it Shaw Home Lottery today?
I don't
I
know.
bought many tickets.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro.
I did have a question in there, but my colleague took so long I might have forgotten.
Sorry, Robert.
Just give me a second. Oh, what's the amount left in that fund?
Currently, there is no budget left, Councillor Miyashiro.
So it's already committed to the end of the budget cycle.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Lori, I was just going to ask, with the COVID thing and the way, nothing could happen. Does that create an opportunity, for perhaps thinking of ways to go viral for some things? And I'm thinking of, for example, computer. I mean, what's the? I can't think of guys that host game nights or whatever, that you could do something from Lethbridge, but it would be virtual. Is there any thought to any of trying to look at ways that you can do that without having people having to be together in the same place?
Councillor Campbell, we've actually funded a number of virtual events through the Community Event Support Grant, which is the smaller event grant, since COVID came. And one of the findings, like for example, one of the things that we did fund was the Play Summit last month. And we actually had participants from across the province, which is a first because it was so much easier to attend. So we funded a few other virtual events, and that's what they're finding, is that they're getting a much larger range and uptake because virtual, obviously, anybody can attend from anywhere. Right. And a lot of them have said that they plan to, in the future, offer virtual and in person now and do like a hybrid, because it is so advantageous. So we are starting to test the water with that with our community groups, and I expect that will just grow.
Deputy Mayor Miyashiro, your hand's up.
It is again. Listening to you guys ask the same question. So answer me this, Lori. It's not up to the group that decides funding, or that you collect the proposals and bring them forward for funding. You don't sit with them and tell them how they should run their event or how they should market it or anything like that, do you?
No, we don't do that, but we do have, there's myself, the sports specialist, and an arts specialist that meets with them over the course of pre-coming to council. And we do give them some feedback because we have all worked so heavily in events that we generally have some, especially if they're out of town. Yes. Yeah.
So some of the ideas that my colleagues had about how to generate interest in the community, would you make those comments to them?
I would always suggest things to groups that would maybe improve upon their events. So if there's an opportunity to do virtual, we would definitely suggest that. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Lori? Okay. If not, then I'll get Councillor Carlson to sponsor this, if I could. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee receive this item for information, and further be it resolved the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council receive the report as in attachment 2 for information at the April 6, 2021 regular meeting of City Council. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Harrison, for being able to answer our questions. Appreciate it, and appreciate the work and the information provided. I'll call for the vote.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? That passes. Okay, 5.2. Once again, it's the Recreation and Culture Development Manager, Lori Harrison, who's here as well. This is about the Culture for Fee Assistance Program 2020 Annual Report. Any questions from members of the committee? And I imagine, Lori, again, obviously a strange year for with COVID, and as in the report that you didn't use as much, but you've got leftover for the next go around. Any comment on that?
Councillor Campbell, thank you. I think just say we have been trying to be as flexible with the program as what COVID has made all of our organizations that offer these activities have to be. And it's been a challenging year, and it's been a challenging year for the community and for the organizations as well. But I think our communication and relationships have helped us be as successful as we have been through these times.
Great. Any other questions? If not, I'll get Councillor Higgin to sponsor this motion. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee receive this item for information, and further be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council receive the report as an attachment 1 for information at the April 6, 2021 regular meeting of City Council. Councillor Higgins.
Yes, thank you, Lori, for that update, and I appreciate all of the work that you do. And I know we are obviously treading on different waters here this last year, and I look forward to what's a lot better 2021. Let's put it that way. So thank you for all your work and for your team for the assistance in this. So I will call for the vote.
All in favor? And opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Committee updates. We have one from Darren Martin's 6.6A, and I'll ask Councillor Miyashiro to sponsor this. Be it resolved, unless there's a question. I think Mr. Martin is actually in the house.
That he is, Mr. Councillor Campbell. He is here and available for any questions.
Anyone has a question? I see none. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee received this item for information. Councillor Miyashiro.
I'd just like to thank Mr. Martins and the Galt Museum staff and board for the work that they're doing to address reconciliation. And they're as a group taking it very seriously, and once again we're trying to reflect our community in a more inclusive way. So thanks for doing that. If there's no questions or comments, then I'll ask for the vote.
All in favor? And opposed? That kind of wraps it up here for today. Councillor Higgin, you can take the adjournment if you like. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn the regular meeting of the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee until Thursday, April the 15th, so I can go get my COVID shot.
Hey.
I was just going to say, when are you going here?
Yeah.
When do we need to adjourn by? Motion to adjourn. Thank you.
All in favor? Great. Thank you. Thanks all.
Hey, before we go, since the meeting's over, did anybody see the drone display from Dublin on St. Patrick's Day?
No.
Instead of doing, this was like something out of a movie. Instead of doing fireworks, they had these 500 drones with green LEDs, and they made a shamrock, and they made Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, wow.
You should go online on YouTube and look for Dublin St. Patrick's Day drone show.
My dog would much appreciate that
Oh,
more than
it was
fireworks.
like totally cool. And then they did like